and we're gonna do a lockpicking meeting. So if you guys can hear me, can you give me a quick response on Discord and the chat? Cool, thanks, Blue Fox. We'll be starting the meeting in 3 minutes. Just making sure we get an internet connection for just announcements. Yeah. Don't worry about it. We just keep your presentation. Yeah, VPN access.
There's also other things that can come like this.
So I can't bring up the website then.
Yeah, so it is because everything in chat is that. And then I'll either wear a shirt or pants or.
I got it. I mean,
Because also for the longest time, that was the dress code. For the company business or.
Alright, so I'll just bring the presentation aside.
Well, we just unfortunately had like 60 tickets plus I said we were going on. Just so with Miami Beach. Yeah. And those are quite comfy. Well, that's running us out.
And what are the haircuts?
Always a shirt.
Are you speaking?
all right. Thanks for joining. We're gonna start the meeting. So if you guys could, gather around, we're gonna do. Today we have lockpicking with a presentation about lockpicking, and then we also have BSD jailbreaks.
No, for BSD jails.
BSD jails.
Using BSD.
All right, using BSD. So. Oh, we have the locks. Locks and the locks page for that. Right? So great. So if you guys want to have a seat, or you guys.
Are you going to start with the app? You're going to start with the BSD gel.
We're going to be starting with the lockpicks, and then we're going to do the BSD jail. So you guys can sit there. You guys can sit there and listen to the presentation and learn and practice.
Okay, so we can be one of the locks.
Yeah, you can bring one of the locks from the table and sit down. At 5 o'clock, 5:30. Hi. Just some quick announcements. HackMiami 10 is coming around May 19th to the 20th. That's our yearly conference. That's our actual yearly conference. It's a paid conference. Go join in and check out the website for prices on HackMiami.com to register for the event. It's almost completely sold out. It's supposed to be a beautiful venue on the beach. You have, I think there was a tent or something as well to hang out at. And a lot of great presentations. I mean, really top-notch presentations. If you look through the event, the speakers list. If you're want to go to if you're gonna go to a DEFCON or a HackMiami or to another conference, you want to see the talks right now are really in line and really good on what's coming up for HackMiami 10. All right. Any other announcements that you guys want to announce?
Other conferences, there's the Hackspace Conf coming up in 2 weeks, I believe it is. 1 week?
1 week.
So yeah, there's and that's in the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool. Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, the conference is actually going for 2 days, right? 2 or 3 days. Friday, Saturday?
Yes, and the Friday one is, if you do the workshops, it's free.
Okay.
If you do the whole conference, it's $200.
Okay. And a lot of people are going to that one. That one's big.
So Prices are $200 for the HackMiami meeting, and there's also training that's really good. A couple of trainings though. I think the trainings are, one of the training is Rod Soto for enterprise pen testing. So if you guys want to check that out, really good training. And Rod Soto is also our founder here for HackMiami. Some great training courses, some great talks lined up, and good keynotes. So come check it out. All right, read through the page. And our presentation today is David with Lockpicking and Reverend Helix with BSD jail. Yeah, BSD jails. All right, and without further ado, let's do some lockpicking. I record them, and we have a Discord where we're trying to use a stage to broadcast it as well. So it'll either go on you. We'll probably scrub out a couple of minutes from the front and the back, and then post it on YouTube. All right, David.
All right, so thank you everybody for coming. And today we're going to be doing lockpicking. It's pretty much a 101 intro, overview on how lockpick works. A little disclaimer, everything you learn here today, use it in ethical reasons, nothing illegal. So why lockpicking? Lockpicking is fun. Personally, I don't see lockpicking as breaking something or trying to bypass the security of something necessarily. I see it more as a security challenge. Like, I see it as a puzzle, as a way of opening a lock without its intended way of being open, which is normally with the key. So, as I mentioned before, before anything, there's actually 2 rules about picks. The first one is never pick a lock that doesn't belong to you, that it belongs to someone else, because that could get you into a lot of trouble for obvious reasons. The second rule is do not pick your own locks if you rely on them. Let's say your house lock, if you're using it on a daily basis, I would recommend for you to actually not pick it. Because if you do not pick it the correct way, you might actually break something, and then it's going to end up in you having to pay for repairs for that lock or that door. So there's 3 kinds of lock openings that we see on an everyday basis. So the 3 versions of lockpicking. So there's lockpicking, there's quick and dirty, which is a method that a lot of burglars use. And then there's the covert and high tech that usually are the ones that do, for example, the spies or government-sponsored threat actors. So the one that we're going to be teaching today and what we're doing is lockpicking, which is pretty much opening a lock with regular lockpicks. The quick and dirty is pretty much what criminals do, as I mentioned. For example, they use, and if you have a gate that has a chain and a padlock, they use, for example, bolt cutters to just cut it open. They're the ones that actually break windows to get into places. They're not trying to be covert at all. They're not trying to be tactical at all. They just want to get the job done, get in and out. It doesn't matter if they break things. That's usually what criminals do. What we do here is completely on the covert side, as in we're opening and leaving pretty much no tracks behind. And then the really covert and high tech, that's, as I mentioned, what pretty much spies do. They go in and out buildings, facilities, and leave no traces behind. That we won't be teaching here today. So lockpicking is easy. We have this kind of lock that we see, for example, on a door knob. We have this kind of lock, which is the common padlock that we see every day and that we actually have here on the tables. And then we have this one, which is the deadbolt. If you think to yourself that they might be different, they all have one thing in common, is that they use pretty much the same method of mechanism. It's been used for decades, which is the keyway and the pin tumblers. So how they work, if we remove the front plates of them, this is how they look on the inside. For example, here we have the cylinder. This slightly yellow part actually spins. We have the key pin, we have the driver pin, we have the spring that presses the tension below, and then we have the cylinder. So this is how it actually looks if you try to open it without a key. This part on the outer side does not spin. The core in the middle actually does spin. So if you're trying to move it without the key, this is what it looks like. It's not opening because the driver pin is actually binding on the shear line. So when we try to open it with a key, the key actually pushes up the key pin until it actually achieves the shear line, and then it's actually able to spin the core. So that's pretty much what we do when we open a key, a lock with a key. So if we look at the lock sideways, this is the pin stack. So not all locks actually have 5 pins. Some of them actually have 4. Some might have 6. The higher the pin count, it could mean the higher the security on the lock. And they're not usually the same size and length for each one. So when we use a key, this is how they're actually pressed. And at the end of the insertion of the key, they all match the shear line. And then once they all match the shear line, then you actually can spin the core and open the lock. You see the insertion of the key, then they all match the shear line. So when lockpicking, we're actually using 2 tools to open the lock. First, we're actually using the tension bar on the bottom or the top if we're using top of the keyway. And what this tool is doing is actually doing the purpose of actually spinning, putting pressure on the core as if you're spinning the key. And then the actual pick is actually pressing on each single pin until you bind them to be able to open it. So you wonder, why is lockpicking possible? So here's why. And then in a perfect world, when you're trying to open the lock, ideally you would have all the cylinders, all the pins binding exactly at the same time when you're actually spinning it. So they all can actually meet the shear line and not get stuck. And when you're pressing it, they wouldn't bind because they're all at the same level. So let me explain a little better. So in real world, this is what the parts actually look like. Because they're all created in industrial machinery. They're not cut to perfection. They all have little imperfections. And because everything is mass produced, because it's cost efficient for business to do locks this way. So this is the cylinders on the lock. If we actually have a few practice locks in transparent that you can actually see the cylinders and you can actually see the pins inside. And then this is what the pins look like. As you can see here, they have a couple of imperfections. They're not completely solid. They're not perfect. So because of these imperfections, when you're actually spinning on the core, that's what it normally looks like. But it's not in a completely straight line. So when you're actually spinning it, because of the imperfections, there's always going to be one of those pins that is going to bind first than the other ones. So taking advantage of that bind, that imperfection, that's pretty much how we pick. So we first, when we're actually tensioning the core, that we see the pressure on the bind, that's how we know which is the first pin that we actually have to pick. So we start picking on that one. As soon as we pick that one, we're going to feel the click of the pin once it sets. Then we move on to the next key pin that it's actually going to be binding.
Say that again. How do you know which is the first pin?
It's actually going to bind. So, for example, normally in an ideal world, all the pins, they would bind at the same time, right? Because it would be perfect. Once you put the pressure, they should all bind at the same time. But because of the imperfection in them, this is how they look in real world. They're not perfect. So because of those imperfections, they're not cut completely perfect, completely straight. So because the size of them is so microscopic that once you start the pressure on them, and because of the imperfections, there's always one of them that's going to bind first than the others. And then because, like, let's say you're putting the pressure on the tension bar and you start picking, all of them are going to feel loose except one. And that's the one how you know you have to pick that one. Once you pick it, it's going to set, it's going to click, and then another one is going to bind. And you follow the same unbinding for each one of them.
So I get why one might bind because it's like, you know, more, whatever, tight against the edges. It's got more friction, it'll hold it in place.
Correct, because of the friction.
Why does another one bind after that? Do they just all have friction and you're working your way down, or how did?
No, for example, in this example here, this one is one binding, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as that one, you put it over the shear line, because what's holding it down is the shear line. Once it goes over the shear line, that's going to completely unbind, and the core is going to move slightly a little bit, and it's going to get stuck with the next one.
Okay, so.
And then when the core moves slightly a little bit, this one is going to remain on top. It's not going to go down anymore.
Okay, so it's holding it in places. You bind one, you go a little bit, you bind another one a little bit more, and each one you just consecutively push.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that is the correct way. That is what it's technically moving, but it's so minute, the amount that actually moves, but you do feel the click, you do feel the tension, but you can't visibly see how much it actually moves, but you do feel it.
So you depend on your ear in order for you to that really feel like.
I would say more tactile than ear, because I've picked locks with earphones blasting music. But it's a mix of both. But yeah, you can go by the ear as well. Like it's sometimes it's a very audible click. So other tools besides single pin picking, as in picking one pin at a time, you can actually do raking. Raking is a method of using one of these tools to insert it and pull it out very quickly. So this is what actually raking looks like. So it's moving multiple pins at the same time with the purpose of just pretty much trying to guess it and make it as quick as possible. And then there is another tool that is commonly used, which is a half diamond, which not only is used for picking, but actually serves as a second purpose. Sometimes you're picking a lock and you don't know how many pins it actually has. If it has 4 pins like the common master locks, or if it has 5 pins or 6 pins, you want to have a rough idea of how many pins you're actually picking, because sometimes you can be hours at a time and then it turns out it had more pins than you actually thought. One cool feature with the half diamond is that because of the flat behind, you can actually count how many picks the lock has. You insert it all the way in, upside down, and then you start pulling it out one by one, and you can actually hear the audible clicks of all the pins falling down. So that's a way of counting how many pins there is inside of a lock. So you insert it, and you start pulling it out one by one. You hear the audible click, and then, yeah. So turning the plug, this is important, because it happens often that a lot of people don't know how to actually properly hold the tension tool, and they might sometimes use too much pressure or sometimes not use enough pressure with the turning tool. This is not the proper way to actually hold the tension tool. So this method, it works. I mean, that's a proper way of holding it, but ideally you actually want to have your finger as far as possible. That way you can get the best feedback on the tension tool. And right now they're using the tension tool on the bottom of the keyway. There's 2 methods of using it, which is the bottom of the keyway and then the top of the keyway. So that's a good turning pressure. If you can see here, you don't see his finger turning completely white. That's ideally a good pressure. And in terms of pressure, you actually want to start soft. If you feel that by using too soft of a pressure, nothing is actually sticking or nothing is binding, then increase your pressure. You want to start soft and then go strong. But don't start strong because you might not be able to do anything, because every single pin is going to be binding inside. For example, here we can see that they're using too much pressure. So this is what's commonly used at the bottom of the keyway. There is also tension tools that are used in the top of the keyway. I believe I do not have pics for those. When using bottom of the keyway, you want to make sure you don't have it all the way in the bottom so you don't cause friction with a plug. Because when spinning, it might be too hard for you to actually spin it. So you want to be careful that it's not causing friction on the bottom of the plug. And then, yeah, let's get hands-on lockpicking.
All right. While we get ready to switch presenters and systems and stuff, go ahead and start lockpicking, you know? If you want.
Yeah.
Kind of fly.
Hey, David, Cisco has a question.
Sure. So, what about security?
At the end of the meeting, and there are a couple of captchas, some rules that you have to follow to just be admitted access to the server when you have to. So I know it's a little bit of a pain to follow those, but it's just to keep bots out and also keep unwanted people out as well. Again, Reverend Helix, Bastille.
Oh, all right. Hello, everyone. All right. So FreeBSD jails using Bastille. So essentially, I'm showing you how to use a tool. FreeBSD is a free and open source Unix-like operating system descended from the Berkeley software distribution, which is based on Research Unix. The first version of FreeBSD was released in 1993. It was the most popular open source BSD operating system, accounting for more than 3/4 of all installed permissively licensed systems. Linus Torvalds has even stated that he probably wouldn't have even bothered with Linux if FreeBSD showed up a few months earlier. Much of FreeBSD's codebase has become integral part of other operating systems such as Darwin, the basis for Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, it's all the Apple stuff, TrueNAS, and ever since the PlayStation 3, 4, and 5 game consoles. As well as when you watch Netflix, you're watching it from a FreeBSD system, utilizing the send file API. There are other BSD systems, OpenBSD, NetBSD, and Dragonfly. There's also Nomad, and a slew of others. They also contain a lot of FreeBSD code and vice versa. FreeBSD is a very mature operating system that is pulling people in 1,000 different directions. Community is smaller, which is a pro and a con in itself. As we all know, like with the war between Systemd and all the other fun Linuxisms, nothing is consistent. Documentation is great. You'll most likely find good documentation on to accomplish your goals. FreeBSD runs on many architectures. Primarily these days, the tier 1 is AMD 64 and ARM 64 V8, being the best supported as of version 13. There are other architectures, but let's face it, these days there's not much demand for PowerPC and Spark. And it's also able to run Linux binaries natively with some limitations. So what is a jail? Well, in the FreeBSD kernel, this is its primary definition. I'm not going to get into that because... So, jails have existed since FreeBSD 4, released in 2000. It is a container. So, Dockers, Kubernetes, and all the stuff that we're using today, we've had for over 20 years in FreeBSD. It's just the difference primarily being management. FreeBSD jails are backwards compatible, able to run jails made with previous versions of FreeBSD. It behaves a lot like a Linux shroot, but actually good. Each jail has its own network stack, which Linux seems to lack in its shrooting environment. You can have jails that run Linux. As I said, it was similar to Docker, Kubernetes, and all that, but not quite the same. Just like Docker, a jail will utilize the static portion of the FreeBSD kernel. It will create its own separate network stack via a set of means. One is just a standard where the address is fixed, and there are ways to make it respond to DHCP. There's also what is known as VNet, very much dynamic, pretty much just like if you had the network stack, the Ethernet interface directly attached to the jail itself. It doesn't have a GUI like a virtual machine, but GUI applications can be executed and displayed on a remote system. Jails do not require CPU extensions for virtual machines and can be run on all architectures. So even if you were able to get a Spark version of FreeBSD to run, you could create a jail without any worry. Adding to the lack of GUI, but able to run applications, say like a Linux application. How I run the Linux version of Chrome on this laptop is through a jail. So that enables me to watch Netflix, Disney Plus, and a bunch of other things, even though the native Chromium browser is not able to display that content. So what is Bastille now? Bastille is an open source system for automated deployment and management of containerized applications on FreeBSD. In short, using jail on the command line can be rather unwieldy. You get a nice long line of things. Keep on going with this size, RAM. Bastille makes it easy for you. So for this, I'm currently using 13.2 stable, even though 13.2 has yet to actually be released. So this is really the 13 branch and what's been accepted, and it's going to be in the next release. They've already marked it off for 13.2, and later this month there will be a 13.2 release. I'm also utilizing the ZFS file system, which enables you to create better snapshots on the fly, where when you say to backup, it suspends the jail, takes a quick snapshot and brings it back up, and then proceeds to take a dump of that snapshot. So and it also makes importing a jail from another system easier. Just for the tutorial part of this, I would assume that one has a FreeBSD system available to them physically or virtually. All commands with Bastille have to be executed as root. So to install Bastille, you can either install it from the package manager, which should just be package install -y to automatically say yes when it prompts you, won't prompt you, and Bastille. And BSD also has its port system, so this is another way to install it directly on your system. Port Snap Auto essentially updates your FreeBSD ports package. To enable a service, the service command, the service itself, and then enable. This marks the service as enabled, but doesn't actually do anything of yet. It just says, upon boot, if there's anything to run, just run it. But so the Bastille in itself is essentially it's all bash script. So it acts as needed. Now, one thing you want to do is you want to make sure that all your network interfaces are up. At the very least, in your rc.conf, mark an interface as up, and then there's one right there. So if I pop over here, and I more my etc.conf. Let's see here. So, all right, I got all these ones defined, but so, all right, so I don't have one that's plainly defined. But as you can see in this line right here, even though I have it commented out, I have everything. Oh, BGE00, have it up, and then here's the IPv6 config, just to give it an IPv6 address. Right there. So we have to set up a jail loopback address, especially useful for NATed environments. Things get a little weird, especially with Wi-Fi, so you have to properly NAT it, because jails, unlike if you've worked with VMware or any other virtual machine hypervisor, doesn't quite have the same network functionality of, so if you, especially like right here on Wi-Fi, it has some issues. But if I was wired up on a regular network interface, no WPA supplicant, no encryption, no nothing, no overhead, it works fine. But here's how to define a cloned interface. So I give it the name of Bastille 0 as the network interface, and then I bring up the network interface with that following command. Then, even though it might be difficult to see from here, in short, we have to define a firewall configuration in order to get NAT running on here, so that everything passes through your NATed interface. And then enable your firewall and then start it. This is how you do it in FreeBSD. Now, Bastille does have a configuration file. And what you'll want to do, especially if you want to use ZFS, you'll have to go through, define, but say that you want to use ZFS, you have to define the pool in the ZFS to use. Essentially the directory, the ZFS directory you want, and then give it some options. So like here I have compress and then a time off. For networking, define the loopback address, and then like here I define for a default gateway for IPv4 and a default gateway for IPv6. Now, in order to use in order to create a jail, using create a jail, you have to pull down the files. So here, this is a command where you bootstrap it, you give it a release, and away you go. It pulls down all the files, and then when you create a jail, it uses those files. So even though, as I mentioned, like I'm pretty much on 13.2 right now, I can pull down the 13.1 files and use them to create my jails. And this is an example of how to create a jail on FreeBSD. So let's create a jail. So make sure everybody can kind of sort of read this. It's the best. So let me see here. User local Bastille, go to your directory. That's where the jails are. And let me just go to git. Right now, I'm just looking to see which interface I'm using. So in this case, on this jail, I'm using the network interface QL0. So, Bastille, create, test, demo, 13.1 release, 192.168.126.33 is on my network. You can either specify an IPv6 address there, I'm using, my network is /22, so if you're just a regular /24 home network, you don't even have to add that in, and then give it the network interface. Yeah, that's the CIDR notation. Although I'm wondering if that was the wisest to use QL0. Can take a moment. All right, let's see here. Have to be root to even get into that directory. So let's see here. Which one did I? Let's see, relay. Might have to use another interface. So, BGE0. All right, fine. All right, IGB. All right. Let's do this on my other machine, since that one's being problematic today. So IGB2. There we go. Played a lot nicer. So, no, I'm still in the system. So like to get into the jail. So here's the inside the jail, although you can see a lot of other things. So IGB2, yep. So double check to make sure everything's all right. All right, so I didn't give it a IPv6 address, so we'll just quickly, oh, yeah, it would help if I had something installed. So we'll just insert in that. There we go. So there we are within the jail. Just updated the package, but kind of got a little ahead of myself here. So that's how we create jail. To list all jails, you just issue the list command, and if you want a more detailed listing, you just add -A to it. So if I go back over here, drop out of the jail. So actually, let's go over to the one that has less. So if I go reset the font size. So here you can see all the jails. This one, well, the reason why you're not seeing the IP address on this one, on the rest of them, is because this one's not using VNet. The rest are using VNet for their networking stack. Now, if I go -A, gets a little bit messy, but gives you more information, gives you the release, more paths, and a few other things. Now, the jail will exist in a directory. In this case, user local Bastille is the root of the Bastille into the environment, and all the jails are within the subdirectory jail, and then there's a jail name. Within these directories, you'll see 3 files: your primary jail configuration file, a file system definitions file to add in extra stuff later, which I'm not going to get into today, and then the root of the jail file system, so all the files it copies over. Actually, add on to my another reason to use ZFS is that it has a deduplicating feature. So with that active, so every time you create a jail, essentially you are copying a set of files over and over and over again. But with the deduplication feature, instead of copying all those files, it will make markers on the file system to say, hey, actually I already have this file over up here. So instead of copying over potentially gigs at a time, you'll have, maybe 100 megs or 20 megs, whatever it happens to be, depending on the size of your jail, of indexes pointing to a base jail with where the original copies are. And it won't actually make another file on the file system until there's a significant difference, or any difference really, to that file. So that way, if your base jail is a gig and it costs you 50 megs to index it, you're using 50 megs and only what changes you've made to the system. So that's another good reason to use it. So that way, it uses a lot less on your disk. So let's see here. So here is what a jail.conf will look like. You got your some rule sets, the console log definition, host name, mount definitions, where it's at, what to run it, security level to run it at. Here I've added in, so these are options. So allow raw sockets equal 1 will allow you to use ping. So there is isolation. So there are things you have to turn on. MLOC, system shared memory stuff, reserved ports. So in here, you define what interface is going to run off, the IP address that it's going to run, so IPv4 address, IPv6 address, and you have to add that for IPv6 as well. So, starter jail, well, kind of did that. This is how you pop in the console, like I did earlier. So if I go here, go to this other desktop, although that kind of just went in with it. And then to stop a jail, just, Bastille stop Alcatraz, or whatever the jail name happens to be. Now you can go into the rc.conf and you can have jails just start up when you boot. So this is how you define how to start it up. It's just a simple little variable, and you just name all the jails space separated, and it'll just iterate through that list and start them up as your system is booting, or whenever you restart the system, start and stop the entire service as a whole. So you can go service Bastille, start and stop, and it'll do what it needs to do. Now, this is how you export your jail. it will safely stop the jail, take a ZFS snapshot, restart the original jail, and then package up the snapshot into 2 files that are timestamped into user local Bastille backups. One file being the snapshot file itself. You do have options to compress it or to do different treatments, and the other being a checksum for the snapshot. So if I go back over here, drop out of the shell, go into my backups. This is a bunch of my jails that have been backed up, and I can pull any of these out and bring them back in at any given moment, as you would expect with anything else. So, and then you would just go Bastille import the path to that file. It'll do a checksum, or it will read the checksum file, perform a checksum on the data file, and say yay or nay. There are options to override a -F, and away you go. If you had to force the situation. And to delete a jail, you give it the destroy command and -F to force. So that'll, if the jail happens to be running, it'll stop it and then proceed to delete. Now, to create a jail with VNet, it's just a simple little modification to the create statement, to the creation. So you just add this -V, and then that lets it know that you want that the system knows that you want to use VNet. At the same time, so here you've got your IP address there. So at the same time, very easily, you can just put in 0000, and it'll know by that to use DHCP instead. So can do. That's just fine. My efforts on being lazy. So we can go over here, and so it was this one. So I2. So here we are creating Alcatraz. Give it a moment. There we go. So here we are. It's received DHCP response from my DHCP server, and it has 192.168.124.192 that it automatically grabbed. I think my next is IPv6. Oh yes, there's a slight difference in the jail.conf. So has a lot of the same stuff as the previous configuration. You can add in these. So here it goes, you state that you're using VNet, define your VNet interface. In this particular case, they create a little bridge device in between. So it's called ePair. So it creates an ePair interface. That's why you might have noticed that I have a lot of crazy list of interfaces when I did ifconfig on one of the main systems. So for every jail, it creates one of these. And so essentially this jib is how it bridges in everything, definition of the interface, because it creates one on this host system and one in the jail. And then at the end, it gives a destroy statement. So when you stop the jail, it gets rid of that interface because it's no longer needed. And yes, FreeBSD can run Linux. Yet again, stated. So just like getting a release of FreeBSD, you just say Bastille Bootstrap, and then whatever you want. In this particular case, we can go Focal, we can go Bullseye, and there's a handful of others that you can grab. And so, I don't know if I've done it here, but say Bastille Bootstrap, say Focal. So, oh, apparently I don't have Deb Bootstrap installed, so let's just go get it then. And I'll do a bunch of stuff to facilitate the Linux environment. Apparently I'm missing a few packages on this system. Go over here. No. I think I might have done it on this system. Yep, I already did it on this system. So here it is, grabbing all the stuff. Says it failed, but not quite. But so that's not to sit here forever. And then this is how you can create a jail with an Ubuntu jail. Just now, instead of a V or whatever, you do a -L, and that'll say this is going to be a Linux jail. And here, so pop into the console of Ubuntu. Looks a lot like when you log in on the default system. You'll notice it says Linux Ubuntu 4.4.0 for the Linux compatibility layer, and then it says FreeBSD, the version of FreeBSD and all of its various other tags. All right. There's also templates that are available. So if you want to like Mongo or even just simple Nginx or create your own, you can create a series of scripts that can become a template to automatically deploy. Also, what's coming up next is for a lot of the stuff that I mentioned that you had to configure. In the next release of Bastille, it'll try to automate the one-time network PF and ZFS configuration. There's going to be another tags feature to tag your containers for whatever metadata you need to use. And they're also working on API interface that should be hopefully be available later this year to automatically configure and deploy jails. And yeah. Any questions? Excuse me? Not supposed to be able to. As far as I know, it's very much isolated. But then again, you know, never say never in this environment, right?
It's like they bring out experiences, but it's harder.
Yeah, and like everything's more isolated because it's like right in the kernel. Even though, not to say it's not like right in the Linux kernel, but it was like security was paramount when they created this, and they've also got, you know, over 20 years working on this damn thing. Whereas with Linux, it's still a little bit more recent, even though it's probably been about a decade. So, but then again, any issue that happens in Linux probably gets addressed right away within FreeBSD. You know, like, can it happen in our environment?
Does Kubernetes support jails?
Kubernetes is primarily Linux at this moment. Not to be confused, because I know in 2015 there was a Docker environment that was created for FreeBSD, and Docker tried to be platform agnostic, and I think that's kind of, it may still be a goal, but I don't think they're really concentrating on it right now. because everything seems to be very Linux-centric in the Docker and Kubernetes environments. But yeah, there are Docker images that have FreeBSD. Reporting? There's the standard stuff, like SNMP. So you can still do that within the jail because it's its own FreeBSD box essentially, right? It is reusing the static part of the kernel. So you can pump that in there. You could also get information from the host system itself. Yeah, there's still a lot more that to be desired within Bastille and how, whether it knows if a jail is properly running or not. But that just comes when, depends on the environment and usually whomever will just make something so that they're satisfied to have that requirement met.
Just a little query on the viewing process. So, the information there, for example, is it like a base image that just goes on with a base image?
Yeah, there's a base image. So in the directory, let me pop out. Oh, over here. So if we go to user, local, Bastille, so you see this releases directory. So effectively, these are all the base jails. So here's the 13.1 release. Here's one of the Debian releases. Here's like whatever the freaking Ubuntu code names are for those. So here we have four images. So one FreeBSD and three Linux. So if you go into the say 13.1 release, so here's all the files it copies from. So there'll just be pointers to these files and directories within your other directories.
So it could be grayscale.
Yeah. So like it even copies from this directory. So so at the same time, you could also even go into the etc directory. One of the things I like to do off the bat is edit this. Although I didn't do it. Oh, I did do it here. So I changed this line right here. I add HTTPS and I go for the latest packages as opposed to no HTTPS and going with the quarterly packages for FreeBSD. But that's one little change, and that way I can just roll it all over. But yeah, you can populate this directory with things and go to town for a base image. So, all right, I think that's it.
Out for sale. If you're interested in attending, we have a channel